Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Hampton. I'm a graduate student. I'm in Dr. Calloway's Ruminant Nutrition class here at UGA, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Oxalobacter. So before we get into the meat of things, I think it's important to talk about what Oxalobacter actually is. So first of all, it is a bacteria. It's an obligate anaerobe, which means it can't utilize oxygen to make its energy, and it's gram-negative, so it has that extra protection around itself. I'm choosing to talk to you today about Oxalobacter because I think it's really interesting the way that it makes its energy. And we'll get into the details of that in just a few minutes. But in addition to being unique in how it makes its energy, it's also present in a variety of environments. So with that, there are two species in Oxalobacter. The first is Oxalobacter formigenes, and it's going to be the one that I'm talking to you about today because I find it the most interesting. And it's mainly found in the colon and in the rumen. So mainly in the colon of monogastrics like swine and humans, and in the rumen, that would be animals like sheep, goats, and cattle. The other member of Oxalobacter is Oxalobacter vibriformis, and it's found in freshwater sediments. So in both situations, Oxalobacter species are performing the same function in their environment. They're just doing so in different environments. So what does Oxalobacter actually do? Why do we need it? Well, the main role of Oxalobacter is to convert oxalate into formate in its environment. Well, let's back up. What exactly is oxalate? Oxalate is the salt form of oxalic acid, and that's a compound that's found in plants. So anytime that you eat a plant, fruit, veggie, whatever, you're ingesting some form of oxalate, or some amount of oxalate, excuse me. Some plants that would be high in oxalate would be like spinach and beets, and for ruminants, clover is really high in oxalate too. So why is ingesting too much oxalate a bad thing? Why do we need to convert it into something else? Well, high concentrations of Oxalobacter can cause several health problems. There's three of them that I'm going to talk to you about today. So first of all, oxalate can bind to minerals such as calcium, iron, and magnesium, and it can cause deficiencies because it's preventing the body from absorbing those when it binds. Okay, so that's number one. In humans, it can cause kidney stones. So most often, it's binding to calcium in the urinary tract, and those are painful, so that's bad. And third, what we see with producers, with ruminants, when they're switching their animals from a lower oxalate diet to a higher oxalate diet, if they do that too fast, the oxalate, is actually toxic to the animal itself. Okay, so when we switch them from like hay to clover, we have to make sure that we're doing it slowly, so we give the animal time to get used to the oxalate. So how does Oxalobacter work? How does it make energy from oxalate? Well, there's two steps, and I'm going to try to walk you through this picture in just a second. But the two steps would be, first of all, we have oxalate into formate, like I mentioned earlier, and that's going to be the step that's most beneficial to the host. And then we have ADP to ATP. So obviously that one's making the bacteria happy because that's how it's getting its energy. So I'm going to try to walk you through this picture. All right. So we have a bacteria. It's hanging out in the colon, in the rumen, hanging out, chilling, doing whatever bacteria do. Okay. And it sees oxalate and it says, "Ooh, that's what I want. That's my food." So it takes this oxalate, 2-, and it brings it in through oxal T. Okay. So oxal T is just the oxalate transporter. And a side note, which I find interesting, it's an antiport, which that means that it's going to bring in oxalate and it's going to push out formate through the same port. Okay, so that's just an interesting side note. All right, so it brings in this oxalate, 2-, and it's going to be important that it's 2- in just a second, so hang on with me. Okay, so it brings it in, and once it's in the cell, it's going to decarboxylate. It's going to be decarboxylated into formate and carbon dioxide. Okay, so we have formate, and we're going to push that back out of the cell. All right. So we brought in oxalate, which is 2-, and we're pushing out formate, which is 1-. Okay, so that means that inside the cell, we have a net -1 charge, right? Okay, well, the cell doesn't want that. The cell does not want a net -1. So what it does, and I'm going to change the pen color to make life interesting, is it's going to bring in 3 hydrogens. Okay, excuse me. And it's going to bring those in through the F1 ATPase. So by bringing these in, it is allowing this ADP to be converted into ATP. So that's how the cell actually gets its energy, okay? But now we just have 3 hydrogens hanging out in our cell. So where do they go? Well, one of them is going to come up here, right by this oxalate, and it's going to be ready to go the next time that we need to convert oxalate into formate. And by the way, if you need to look at the chemical formulas, if that makes sense better, I completely understand. This one right here is oxalate, and this one right here is formate. So you can see that we need this hydrogen right here to make the formate. All right, so that's where one of them goes. It's going to be chilling out up here. All right, so then we have a net 2+ down here. So up top, we have that net -1, and down here we have a net 2+. Okay, so that means for overall in the entire cell, we have a net +1 at the end of all of this. Well, the cell didn't want a net -1, and it doesn't want a net +1 either. So it's going to bring in another oxalate, and it's just going to keep going and going and going. Oxalate, hydrogen, net -1, net +1. And that's just how it's going to make its energy, and it's going to keep going and going and going. Okay, so all of that is great. You know, and now we know how it makes this energy, but how does it impact our animals? Why is this helpful? Why should we care? Okay, so there's a study done in 2013, and what they did is they looked at 5 cannulated ewes. And what they did is they put in some oxalate straight into the rumen, okay, and they tracked how it impacted the microbial population. They tracked and several other parameters as well. So what they found is, first of all, they found that it decreases ammonia in the rumen. So the paper actually attributes this to lack of proteolysis, or a decrease in proteolysis, and that just means lack of protein degradation, or a decrease in protein degradation, excuse me. And this can be good for the animal because that actually means that more of the protein is going straight to the animal instead of being utilized by the microbes first. So this can be good, and it also can be good in terms of environment too, because we're reducing the ammonia. Another thing they found is that oxalate supplementation can significantly increase Oxalobacter formigenes, okay? And this is going to get really interesting in just a second. Additionally, they found that over the course of the study was 14 days, they tracked it every day, the microbial population every day. So they found that when they first started feeding oxalate, the microbial population did change. But by day 14, everything had gone back to normal except Oxalobacter formigenes. So this is suggesting that Oxalobacter formigenes is the main player in oxalate degradation. And this is really interesting, especially when you compare it to something like tannins. Tannins need a lot of different bacteria to help break them down. And this is really special that this one bacteria can break oxalate down by itself, or it appears to be by itself. So just a few things to kind of wrap things up a bit. Again, Oxalobacter is a gram-negative bacteria. It's found in many mammals, ruminant, non-ruminant, and it's important in preventing kidney stones, oxalate toxicity in ruminants, and mineral deficiencies. And it's very unique because it's one of a few, if not the only bacteria that can break down oxalate to form energy. So with that, here are my references. Thank you so much for listening and bearing with me, and I hope you all have a great night. Thank you.